Well, I mean, I am overwhelmed. Thank you all for coming out on such a kind of a crummy day. We're so excited to see this turnout, to see the interest in our young people. I'm really excited to hear from our young people today. I think that will be the highlight of the day, but we have a few other things to talk about as well. So I just want to be real clear about how important this program has become to our community. For those of you who know, Bright Futures for Youth has been now in existence for 5 years. And Bright Futures for Youth represents the coming together of the Friendship Club, the Neo Youth Center, and of course the SAFE program that we launched in 2019. So I want to say a few thank yous. First of all, I want to thank community member Tom Cross. Yeah. Tom approached me in 2018. I was running just the Friendship Club at that point, and he was concerned about homeless youth in our community, and he thought we needed to rally and do something about it. He asked if we would consider starting a pilot program. And in all our enthusiasm and, naivete, perhaps, we were like, sure, no problem, but there can't be that many. So we designed a quick little pilot program that was cohort-based, because that's what we were used to at the Friendship Club, and we had a great plan. And very quickly we realized that there were far too many and far too many disparate situations for that model to work. So we quickly, and with donor support, and with county support, and with support through the Elevate Youth, through Sierra Health Foundation, we were able to woman up, mostly, as case management services. And since 2019, we have served over 500 youth experiencing homelessness. Thank you. But one is too many, and 500 is unacceptable. I do want to thank, SAFE program, I'm so proud, and we have served so many, but we don't do this alone. So I do want to say thank you to partners that we have all come together to serve our kiddos, from the Nevada County Superintendent of Schools, to Nevada County Social Services, to Behavioral Health, to Public Health, to Freed, Communities Beyond Violence, and I'm probably forgetting a few. So I just want to, and probation, thank you, of course, probation, and we'll get to hear from some of them later. This is a community effort. These are our kids. They were born here, they were raised here, and somewhere along the way they were failed here. And we need to take care of them. And if we're going to get ahead of the chronic homeless problem in our community, we have to pay attention to these kids. 50% of chronically homeless people started as homeless youth. They are at the developmental stage now that we can reach them and we can change the course of their lives. And this is where we need to invest. So thank you to the partners who have helped. Thank you to Nevada County who've stepped up. Thank you to the donors who have stepped up. And I won't lie, we need all of you. Grants funding is limited. Donor support makes the difference. So whether it's the Friendship Club or NEO, who are the prevention programs that put younger children in front of us sooner than later so that we can recognize the challenges that they may be facing, or if we miss them, but we can grab them at 17 as homeless youth, it all matters. So thank you. This is an overwhelming response. We're so grateful. And I'd like to introduce some really exciting and wonderful people. In our early journey, we were able to, I do want to also recognize Aurora Packard. She's not here with us today, and she's no longer with the Bright Futures for Youth, but it really was her passion. I hired her, and I told her, go become an expert on youth homelessness, figure all of it out, learn all the things, meet all the people. And that was made possible by the HEAP grant, that very first opportunity for homeless grant. And she went to conferences, and she had the privilege of going with the county to the Built for Zero conference, and she met these amazing people, the Cal Youth group. She met representatives from all over California. I cannot tell you how passionate and cooperative and collaborative the youth homeless space is. Everyone wants this problem solved. everyone wants to help each other, and it's just a lovely environment. When we started in 2019, 20 of 58 counties in California were addressing youth homelessness. That number has shifted quite a bit. I'm going to have Kim talk about that. But we are one of very few rural communities who are doing that. And so I want to give us all a round of applause because this is really important for rural California to pay attention to. So, with that, I would like to introduce our partners today. Now, I should say this is in partnership with Cal Youth, a statewide organization addressing youth homelessness. I'm a proud board member of that organization, and we are part of their tour to highlight programs in California that are addressing youth homelessness. So we're so grateful to be in partnership with you today. And with that, I'll introduce Executive Director Javon Wilkes and Kim Lewis from Lewis Advocacy.
Thank you so much. Again, as Jennifer has alluded to, and just excited, I think all of us being here together because we together can end a cycle of homelessness for young people. And so, again, it's lovely to see each and every one of you in this room. I'm, again, Javon Wilkes, Executive Director with the California Coalition for Youth, or Cal Youth. When I say Cal, you say youth. Cal, youth. Cal, youth. Beautiful. See, look at that. Look at that. We on an emotional roller coaster today, y'all. Some highs and lows, okay? This work has been truly my life. And I'll get into more of that, but we're also here for Youth Hope Month. Can y'all say that with me? Youth Hope Month. Youth Hope Month. One more time. Youth Hope Month. California Coalition for Youth, again, Cal. Youth. Bam, look at that. Look at that. We've been around since 1979, all to improve and empower the lives of California's youth. In 1986, we started operating the California Runaway Hotline while doing the advocacy work. And then in 1989, I was born. So y'all could probably figure out the age there. But a year later, in 1990, we saw young people experiencing homelessness and brought people together to let the state know we need to address this. And so then in 1994, right, 1994, we had our first youth board member. You know, the board members with the fiduciary responsibilities and all that stuff. When taxes come out, they got to review it too, right? So we believe in the power of young people and their voices regardless of their circumstances, especially with one of the most damning experiences of homelessness and the traumas that come with that. And so in 1996, we then changed the California Runaway Hotline to the California Youth Crisis Line. And then in 2001, we changed our original name, which was the California Children and Youth and Families Coalition, to the California Coalition for Youth. And so then, that's 2001. Of course, I'm still alive this whole time. This whole time, I'm still alive, right? In 2005, I joined my first convening with Cal Youth. And my time before that, when I was born in 1989, I immediately entered the system. I was taken from my mother. And through that journey to 2005, I had already experienced carceral system. I experienced the behavioral health system. And then in 2004, I was homeless as a kid in the streets of downtown Los Angeles. And so in 2005, when I was able to come to what is now known as the Youth Empowerment Summit, or yes, can I get a yes? Yes. So our Youth Empowerment Summit, yes, I had the opportunity to understand what advocacy can truly do to elevate the lives of the peers that I knew that were enduring so much trauma in their life. And so in 2005, had the first yes, and then in 2005, we'll go to 2015. It's 25 years later from Cal Youth's birth in 1979, right? 25 years later, no funding for youth homelessness. We've been advocating. The crisis line had half its funding cut, and yet we still advocated to get the funding restored and get an increase. And then in 2016, we had a call to action. Jerry Brown was the governor at that time. If I have my slides, we have a photo. We wasn't playing. We don't play when it comes to youth homelessness. And so we was up in that office. We was up in many people's office at the Capitol, letting them know the importance of elevating youth homelessness. That call to action today has led to a youth set-aside that is able to have beautiful spaces like this where young people's lives get impacted to the degree that they can thrive. And have people who care about them thriving and will bring community, a whole army to make sure that their lives are at the top and prioritized. And so in that, we have worked with many departments, folks across the state, and as Cal Youth, we have a membership, folks throughout the state of California, where we can let our electeds know, we can let their elected know. There's district offices. We, again, run the 24/7, 7 days a week. My team, Kim, Denise, who's in the crowd here, our membership and public policy coordinator, most of us started as youth, actually, as young people saying we got to do something about our peers. We got to do something about the youth and our children, our babies. And so the crisis line operating that, we have our exclusive executive advocacy day where we bring not just the leaders, but the youth with them to do the advocacy work. And then, of course, we have our Yes Summit. That's happening in April this year. The Cal Youth Tour, we just came from elevating youth homelessness from as far as San Diego. Let me list it out for you. We was in San Diego, Orange County. Of course, we here in Nevada County, Grass Valley. We were in Oakland, Contra Costa, San Bernardino, Ventura County, LA, Stanislaus. We going and do a turkey giveaway because we heard about the SNAP stuff, right? So we know disruptions in the life of someone experiencing homelessness only begets more disruptions. So however intervention can happen, hey, let's go give out some turkeys. And some other place. I think it's 11 that we are in total going to elevate. And of course, Sacramento. Got to represent Sacramento because that's where we are right now. That's where our home base is. And we are in Sacramento because why? A lot of state policy come from there, a lot of funding. And getting the understanding of that and then taking it to the local level is how we make sure that programs like this are elevated, that the work is being done, the funding is actually doing what it's meant to be doing, even though it's not enough. So with that and with the funding and the data that comes with it, high level, y'all see where I come from. Young people can thrive, and who would have thought I would be an executive director? The truth, when they asked me the first time, I said no. Not because of how tough it was, but because I love being a father. Had my first child, 2018, when they said, hey, Javon, you want to be on the board of directors? Now, mind you, I was also a youth advisory board member and then became a board member. That's when the fiduciary responsibilities and taxes and stuff came in. But then they asked me to be the leader, the face of the organization. And again, this has been my life. So Kim has been a part of my life, y'all. Denis is now in my life. That's how our team operates. We're in each other's lives, and majority of the volunteers, over 100 for the crisis line, are youth themselves. So this work is heart work, and you can see it in the leadership. You can see it in the team that comes and do this work every day. So with that, I'm going to now hand it over to Kim to hit y'all with the data and what the state is doing right now when it comes to youth homelessness.
Javon's always a tough act to follow, but thank you guys for having us here this morning and starting off your day in celebration of Youth Hope Month. It used to be called the Runaway and Homeless Youth Prevention Month, but we thought we'd be a little bit more positive and call it Youth Hope Month and try to give our young people an opportunity to look for something positive in a world that oftentimes feels so dark, especially on days like this where can you imagine sleeping on the streets in this kind of weather? And it gets worse up here, I imagine, with all the snow on the ground and things. Right? So it's not easy for our young people. We've been doing this work, again, for a long time. I've been involved with the coalition for over just 20 years now. So part of the work that we have been doing is to educate lawmakers around what is the issue, because for a long time, nobody was really talking about young people and the fact that nobody could believe that a young person themselves could be experiencing homelessness on their own and on the streets. And a lot of times we dealt with the issue of, well, aren't they in foster care? Right? Isn't that what our support system's about and supposed to be helping them? We'd also seen a lot of data around foster care of those letting young people also experience homelessness and leaving the system. And California's always said, well, why are we doing this for our young people? They are our future. So they could be thriving, positive, living great lives, living the American dream, or they could be on the streets, they could be in jails, they could even be dead. And that's not the future I think any of us want for our young people. And so it's taken a lot of time of us educating folks around what are the causes, what is leading to these issues, and what is the data? Because unfortunately, many people didn't believe that there was a young person experiencing homelessness and was always saying, show me the data, show me the data. And I'll take a step back that for a long time, the point-in-time count was kind of the biggest measure that everyone looked at around, well, where are the young people? And frankly, we weren't calling out that 18 to 25-year-old population in our point-in-time counts, only starting in 2013, when the federal government said, hey, I think we should start doing this. And then by 2015, that's going to be your baseline number. So really, that's partly what helps stem the movement to say, yeah, actually, we've got a lot of youth, 18 to 25, who are on their own. And we didn't realize it because we were lumping them in with the 18 and up. So we couldn't really look at that meaningful data and realize what was happening and what was happening locally. And point-in-time counts are inaccurate at best, but it's what we have, right? Because it's partly what's required. HUD requires us to do these counts, and that's what drives everything around all your funding. So all the federal funds that come in for your continuum of care are all based on what is your point-in-time count, as flawed as it is. So don't view counts going up as a bad thing, because they've never been great to begin with. Right? So if you want your fair share of dollars, you kind of have to have a better count. And unfortunately, we reward people who have better counts. Right? And so even for your state data funding around HAP, that is all also based on the point-in-time counts. I've also said to state lawmakers, this doesn't help when communities are doing the right thing, investing and making systems changes and reducing their population, you penalize them by taking away their money. That's not how we should be funding systems. But Nevada County only had 13, according to your point-in-time count, of youth experiencing homelessness. But we just heard from Jennifer that they've already served over 500 young people in the last 5 years. So according to, there's another system called the Homeless Data Integration System, which the California Interagency Council on Homelessness runs. And according to that data set, you guys served over 117 young people in 2024. So see that big disconnect between 13 and 117? You guys aren't getting the resources to support that 117 because you're not counting them. And the challenge also becomes is, right, because we use a lot of HUD definitions, unfortunately, and this is a federal thing that, we're not going to solve here, but we have solved it at the state level in the things that we can control. In our HAP funding, the definition for youth is broad to capture our young people who aren't just literally on the streets. So we can serve those young people who are couch surfing or who are sleeping in their cars or, are in and out of homelessness. So we are using the tools that we have available to us to make the policy that we can control work better for our communities. And I know it's harder for rural communities. We've always talked about this as a coalition because we are statewide, that a lot of the attention goes to our urban, like big centers, right? LA gets a ton of the attention. They also get like 40% of the dollars, right? And it feels unfair, but they also have 25% of the state population. So a little disproportionate, but we've always advocated for a balance and ensuring that no, every community has a young person, unfortunately, experiencing homelessness. You just may not know it. Because young people don't walk around with signs saying, hey, I'm homeless. You see the visible. You don't see the young people because that's from a stigma perspective, not something that they want to experience or want to be boxed into. So we've really done a lot to educate and profile and share a lot of the research and resources that are out there to really highlight nationwide. They talk about prevalence data saying 1 in 10 young people between 18 to 25 are experiencing homelessness and 1 in 30 under 17. So those numbers are high. They don't have to be. And so when we do targeted interventions, because we don't believe that young people should stay with us forever, they're only youth for a certain amount of time. And if we can build continuums of services from prevention, from the front end, and catching them before it becomes a big issue, is a lot cheaper than waiting until they've been on the streets and had multiple years of trauma that we're trying to invest in and prevent and deal with. So we're going to have more of our bang for our buck, if you want to look at it that way, right? If we're really focusing on our young people. We have recognized this in the juvenile justice system, right, where we've recognized we're not going to sentence kids to life without the possibility of parole if they're under 25. So why do we treat our young people experiencing homelessness any different? Because we're almost sentencing them to that when we choose to ignore them. And the set-aside started at 5% in HEAP. It was the best I could do at the time, but we had great conversations with Jerry Brown and his team who recognized that, maybe your data is right. Maybe all this research does matter. So we'll make sure you get a little foot in the door. We'll give you a little nudge and say, we'll carve out 5% for you. And then that has grown to 10%. I think we need to be at 20%. We've got some partners at UC Berkeley who do a lot of research, and they're seeing much more. It's like 20% of your homeless population tends to be young people. They just get missed a lot by the system. So I challenge a lot of communities to think about investing more on your young people than just the statutory minimum. That 10% to me is a floor. It is not designed to be the ceiling. It is to say, at a minimum, you need to be spending 10%. And so what can we do to do more to help ensure that we build out that continuum? We, as a statewide level, we're working on trying to get a youth housing bond passed. Ideally, to be a part of a bigger housing bond, but we want to make sure that we build facilities for young people. It is hard to raise capital and all of that stuff to be able to have things like time-limited housing, interim housing, transitional housing, whatever you want to call it in terms of whatever housing segment or human services segment you come from. But we're really trying to get dollars so we can have actual facilities for young people that are smaller, more appropriate. We're trying to make sure we create environments that work for them. And we don't want them with us forever. Permanent supportive housing is amazing, and it works for a lot of populations, but not all of our young people. Yes, some of them are going to need it, but they shouldn't be with us forever. And if we can support them with the robust services and wrap around that, we can really see them launch off and have really positive lifetime trajectories. And that's what we want. So we want to start with we've got dollars for services through HAP. We need to grow it. This year, the governor committed to $500 million, which is half of what's been funded in HAP rounds previously. We still have time this coming year to advocate to make sure it gets back to that $1 billion. There is still time to do that, but they're in the process of it, so we want to make sure that we don't lose half the dollars we have. And then plus this housing bond is another piece that we're trying to do. We are also working on making sure that systems, like the child welfare system, are not keeping young people homeless and or not bringing them into the system when they should be brought into. We see a lot of challenges across communities, excuse me, when young people are 16, 17 because they're almost 18. And unless we can get them through that court process before they're 18, they can't come into child welfare. So we know that sometimes drop-in shelters and drop-in centers are a great first entry point to support our minors, our young people, to be able to help them get spaces to be able to come into a safe space, right? And identify, do they actually fall in for child welfare or not? But we really should have these entry points to, if a young person does belong in child welfare, how do we get them in? Because there's a lot of funding in that system to be able to support these young people if they've been abused or neglected, and we shouldn't just be pushing them out because they're almost turning 18. Like, that's not fair to them. Frankly, a lot of times we see young people who have similar histories of other youth who have been in foster care and those who haven't. The difference is somebody had an intervention and somebody didn't. So how do we identify them early? I mean, your schools are reporting 41 young people who are unaccompanied in your school system in the 24-25 school year. Again, that's more than your point-in-time count. So how do we help those 41 young people get supports and services who are on their own in schools, who are under 18, to help them? Right, so we've got a lot of need. It's about knowing what the data is, how do we help them, and think about how do we build a continuum. So from, again, shelter through transitional housing so that they can thrive. They can either go to college, get a career, whatever they're trying to do, but we want them to be successful and leave us, right? And treat them as our children. And so there's a lot of work that's happening at the state level, and I'd say communities like yours are not being forgotten by folks like us. We come and do these tours so that we can see what's actually happening and hear about what the need is, so that I can bring that to Sacramento and I can say, hey, do you guys know these things? Here's what's going on here. I'll tell you a story about another rural community, Tehama, who after the HEAP round was like, wow, we had no idea we had young people experiencing homelessness. And only because there was a 5% set aside that they were forced to actually try to address that, did they actually realize that they had a problem. So, you know, sometimes it's the little things that we're growing this momentum, and so appreciate all of you guys' interest and passion for supporting these young people, because we have it too. And if there's anything we can do to be helpful, I'm happy to do that. And I'm going to turn it back, I think, to Jennifer, unless there's anything else I can cover.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having the Senator's office here. It's amazing to see all of you here. I did not expect it. I would have dressed up a little bit more. Sorry. It's pretty amazing. I know, but still. I always want to, do good. So I have a personal experience with Bright Futures for Youth. I had the opportunity to work here as the development director when it was the Friendship Club. And so I've been able to have a personal kind of experience and watch this organization grow and develop and really meet the need of our community. And it's an honor to be able to present Bright Futures for Youth once again with a certificate of recognition from Senator Megan Daly's office. Homeless people experiencing homelessness are very dear to the senator and the senator's office and our team, but youth, that pulls a different string. And Jen is always so eloquent and bringing down, I think, maybe like the temperature of the room to ground us and to let us know how important this day is. So thank you for everything you do for the community. Thank you for this amazing staff that does this. Thank you for Aurora, wherever you are, for your passion. So so I don't start crying, I'm just going to read. In recognition of Bright Futures for Youth, your unwavering commitment to supporting young people in Nevada County who are experiencing homelessness or housing instability, your work through SAFE program and your leadership in advancing outreach, prevention, and education efforts have proved critical safety net services, hope, and stability to hundreds of youth in our community. On behalf of the California State Senate, thank you for your dedication to ensuring that every young person has the opportunity to feel safe, supported, and seen. Your efforts strengthen our communities and inspire lasting change. Thank you. Here you go. You don't have to cry, sorry.
I'm Dana Jorgensen with Assembly Member Hadwick. She's new to the legislature. She is from Modoc County. We have a very large county, and we have 11 counties in our district. And I am down at the very bottom in Amador. I've worked in the legislature. It's actually the only thing I've ever done. I really like it. But I have not served Nevada County before, and it's been kind of fun for me. I've really liked coming here. It's kind of rejuvenated me, meeting new people. And I call you our kind of large, small county. And I want to thank you all for coming out here. We would not have this in some of our smaller counties. There are efforts, obviously, to address this, but it's not on the scale that I'm seeing here today. I know you really all do care and want to tackle this issue, and there's a lot of things that you can do with your time, and you've particularly chosen this issue. So keep at it. I have a certificate as well, and it's to Bright Futures for Youth. Thank you for your efforts to uplift and support the youth of Nevada County. I am pleased to congratulate you on your work to put a spotlight on and help end youth homelessness in Nevada County. The safety net services that Bright Futures for Youth provide are vital towards improving the lives of young people, and I salute your life-changing work in this critical area of service to the community. Signed by Assembly Member Hadwick. And I worked in the Senate for a very long time, and I came over to the Assembly, and one of the cool things is we are the first district. So she does represent the first district in California. I just, we do look at the newspapers. I think minimal disbursements to counties, that works for our small counties all day. We would advocate for that on everything. It is a little bit of a fight, but it's a good fight to have. And I would also say, come down to the Capitol, do your specialty shopping, maybe go to a nice meal, but come and see us. One person I worked with once said, being a legislator is an interesting job. You get a fire hose of one issue for 15 minutes, and then you go on to a fire hose of the next issue, and you do that all day. Coming, and there's a lot on their minds, and reinforcing to us that this is a problem, just the in and out action of doing that. I can't tell you how important that is. And calling the office and saying, I'm advocating for this in the state budget. My name is Joe, whoever, and I live in Grass Valley. We have insider stuff. We have the voting records in our computers because we want to keep track of what people are saying. If we have large lists of people, if we get 20 people that organically call and say they want something, to us that means 200 or 300 people. So it really does make a difference. I know it's blocking and tackling, and it's like that stuff really does make a difference. So I'll just share with that. Keep doing that. So thanks.
All right, so we are going to hear from our youth action board. So I'm going to turn it over to Zoe Haynes, who is our TAY support specialist. She'll tell you a little bit about what that means, and she will moderate our youth panel today. We will ask for questions too, so if you're thinking of questions for young people, keep them in there, and we'll do that at the end. Thank you. Zoe.
Thank you. All right, guys, so I'm the Transition Age Youth Support Specialist for the SAFE program, and basically what that means is I work on developing programming for independent living skills workshops, and I also am the adult facilitator for our Youth Action Board. And I also create a job chart and distribute that weekly to help youth find jobs locally. Today we have an amazing panel of youth with lived experience who are also all members of our Youth Action Board. So they're all advocating for homelessness locally with their lived experience and with their stories. And I'm sure you guys all remember being young. It's a really difficult time in life, but they're using this time to actually advocate and use their lived experience. And I am privileged to get to know every one of them. They are incredible people. And I want you guys to know if there's any questions you want to pass on, feel free. And also feel free to speak up and add anything if you're really inspired to. I know we have to share 2 mics, so it can get a little difficult. We're going to start with introductions and pronouns. So if you want to set us off. You can just grab the mic, yeah. We can kind of move it around.
My name is Gage, and my pronouns are he, him.
I'm Lila, and I'm she, her. I'm Emily, and I'm she, her.
I'm Anja. You can use she, her.
Thank you, guys. All right, guys, so I'm going to have you briefly each share your experience with homelessness and how joining the SAFE program has changed that in some way. Feel free to chime in whenever you're ready.
So I've been kind of like homeless since about 6th grade. It was through my parents. They became homeless, and obviously living with them, it kind of trails into your own life. And with SAFE, I've actually been put into a housing program. So I have a room in a home with roommates, and it is very nice, and I do love it there. And it definitely would not have been as capable as I thought it would have been without SAFE.
I became homeless at 15 after some conflict, and I reached out to SAFE about a year ago, right after I turned 16, or right before I turned 16. And they got me into contact with Community Beyond Violence, who got me into their shelter. And I stayed there for 6 months, and I am now, I have an apartment, and SAFE is helping fund that so that I can stay there. And they've been really helpful to me for helping me throughout everything.
I've been homeless since 5th grade. I'm Lila's sister, so you can imagine how we've gone through that together. I can say it affected me by relationships. It was really hard trying to find somewhere that you could go to. And I'm really blessed now that I have SAFE because they help me with a lot of what I need.
I was homeless originally at 3 months old after our family home burnt down. And my family experienced homelessness and housing instability on and off until I was about 9 years old. And then at 18, in high school, I got kicked out and had some housing instability, but thankfully was able to kind of build my way out of that after getting a job here. And then the SAFE program was introduced to me because I didn't realize I was experiencing housing instability, and I was able to get resources to get some financial aid because I'm trying to go into school, and the SAFE program was able to sign a paper that proved that I am not supported financially by my parents, and that's how I was introduced.
Thank you guys so much for sharing your experience. All right, we got our first question, and they're in front of you as well if you need to read them. What challenges have you encountered as a homeless youth or have noticed others facing as homeless youth? Chime in, whenever you feel.
I experienced not enough resources being available for youth. We have quite a few resources for the homeless community in Nevada County, but specifically shelter-wise, there is only one shelter in the county that minors can stay at, and that is the Community Beyond Violence shelter. And I've also experienced it's really hard to be able to do things on your own if you are under 18 without any sort of legal guardian, without anyone who can sign off on paperwork. I have a lot of health issues and have been trying to get into specialists to figure out what's going on. But given my limitations of not having a parent to sign off on that paperwork, I haven't been able to get the health care that I needed. And emancipation takes roughly around 2 years. By the time that I would get through that process, I would already be 18. So that would just be stress for no reason. And yeah, there's just not enough resources for minors to be able to do enough things without their parents' consent. Even getting in school, you need parental consent. I dropped out my sophomore year, and I'm finally back in school. I'm set to graduate the end of next fall semester. So.
I would definitely say healthcare is a big one. Not with having parents that don't really see how healthcare could be super beneficial. Throughout my term of homelessness, I don't think I went to the dentist or doctor throughout all those years, my middle school and high school, and I never really realized that it was a bad thing. And I got with Safe, and we were talking, there's certain things that we talk about, and we brought up healthcare, and I realized that it's actually very important to have healthcare, especially when you're young, so that if anything is wrong, you can catch it very early on rather than waiting and something happening and then you realizing, if that makes sense.
I would like to add to the healthcare by also saying I do have underlying medical conditions that I'm trying to figure out myself. And my case manager, Kendra, she took me to the post office. I didn't have any form of identification for myself. I had no ID, no birth certificate, no Medi-Cal card. My parents lost. I had no form to identify myself. My case manager took me to the post office and notarized my birth certificate, so I have a form of identification. And I just recently went last week with Zoe, and I got my ID so I can file to get a new Medi-Cal card so I can go and get the help that I need. And it wouldn't have been possible without the people pushing me and telling me that I need to go and get things looked at.
I think the biggest challenge for me has been not knowing at all, not realizing my family or being in denial about what is homelessness and do we qualify and do I even deserve to get help because I have it so good. That has been the biggest challenge and has been prevented me from getting anywhere or getting help.
Thank you guys so much. Our next question is a homeless youth. What is something that could change everything for you, like the magic fix?
Something that would change everything for me is a spot that I know won't be taken away. And for me right now, I was lucky enough to be put with Connecting Point, and I was in a 3-month internship, which helped me save a little bit of money so I can buy things for myself and try to get back on my feet for a couple of months. Without that, doing these tabling events and panels is what I get paid from. That's my monthly income, you'd say. So for me, what would really help is just somewhere that wouldn't be taken out from under my feet and some type of transportation so I can get to and from places, try to get a job, and especially in winter, it's hard to get around. And I know I have an amazing support system around me that will help me get anywhere, but also the independency part of me would love to do it myself.
I think something that has changed everything for me is a solid support system. Many people who I can call if I need absolutely anything. And for me, that looks like I have friends who are mechanics who will fix my car when I can't afford to. And I have the SAFE program, who, if I need rent money, will give it to me. So I am assured enough to know that I can walk through my life, and like I don't have to worry about being unstable again. I have friends who will support me. I have people who, many people in my phone that I can call if I need something. And that is really, really lucky. None of these people are my parents. You know, I don't have a mom to call if I need something, but I do have a random woman in their 40s who will give me advice. That's real.
Something that would change everything for me is, again, just having more things available for youth and not without a legal guardian. And another thing is job opportunities. It is so insanely limited in such a small county to the point where I relied just on my EBT money. And with the cuts that just happened, that threw me way out of whack. And we do have quite a few food banks and food resources, but having other resources for youth, I think, would be way more helpful. There should be more housing available for youth without a legal guardian. And I definitely think that something that could change everything for many, many people is continuing to have the support system that we have and continuing to have the funding that we have to be able to support as many homeless youth as we can.
I would definitely say stable jobs are very hard to get right now. I went out the other day, put out so many resumes, and over half, like about half, when I went in said like, we'll take your application, but it's winter season, so you might not get a call back pretty much. And so like, I still gave it to them, you know, be hopeful, put yourself out there. But I'd definitely say finding jobs for youth is pretty hard, especially when like you're not very used to stability and constant routine. And once you have a job, because I have had a job, like my sister, we did Connecting Point, did like internships and things like that. But having a stable job that won't end and one that you know that will like support you, I feel is very important for homeless youth, just because there isn't a lot of stability in our lives in the first place, that a job would really like push us forward and be like, okay, this is our routine. We have something to do every day, somewhere to go, people to see, like we have to keep it rolling, you know? And yeah.
I've brainstormed once, and you have to hear me out. Okay? Imagine someone has like a type of farm, right? Like whatever you grow or plant, like vegetables, right? So imagine a farm where a bunch of troubled youth go and work, and it's like continuous work because it's like a farm. You know what I mean? So I feel like it would be so beneficial, and it's like not reserved for it, but if like you are like if you're troubled and in need of a job without any other resource, I've just brainstormed that maybe that would be like a really cool thing, because you get like hands-on, you get experience, and you get like the people around you, and the whole experience on top of the help, I think it would just be an amazing idea.
Thank you, guys. Those were all really great answers. So now we're going to move into some questions that you'll remember because they were from our youth listening session we did 2 weeks ago. The first one, where you guys had a lot of really great ideas, is what are the resources you wish available to homeless youth, like the specific resources that you've come up and needed?
One thing that we talked about last time was the emancipation process, and how you have to have 2 years of a job on no government collection benefits. So you have to be completely like responsible for yourself. And being a homeless teen, that's like nearly impossible unless you have Mother Teresa on your side. Like, there is no way you can be housed stable without any government help to expect to be emancipated. And even like Gage said, it takes years. It's a process. And by that time, you probably are gonna be 18 and don't need the emancipation anymore. And it's just, there should be a better system where it's easier for kids that physically do not have another option but to take care of themselves.
Another thing we brought up in one of our listening sessions was ways for youth to build credit and get themselves started to be able to get an apartment, because most apartments or anywhere want at least 3 years renting and a great like credit score. And like if you're 18 and you've already been through homelessness, you definitely want to start your life. You do not want to wait. You want to jump right in. And credit is definitely something that was never really like a priority, I feel like, in school or anywhere really. And like now having a place through SAFE and knowing like that's temporary housing, like I'm really thinking about financially being able to find anywhere because of my credit and not even having a credit card. Like I don't know if I even want a credit card because it's just like I'm so young and it's like I don't want to ruin my credit, but it's also like I need it built and I'm not sure how to go about it because there was never a resource to tell me how important it was. Yeah.
I remember another thing that we talked about was, you know, there's access to food, but not so much like healthy, balanced meals and the education to make a healthy, balanced meal taste good. You know, like, yes, there are ways to get food, but not the type of food that is going to, like, help me feel good. And, you know, the type of knowledge to, like, know what that even is. We were talking a lot about that.
Something else that a resource that I wish was available is, this is kind of, I have to add a little story for context. In 2021, my mom passed away. And after that, I was supposed to be collecting survivor's benefits. And because my dad is my legal guardian, he has been cashing those for the past 4 years. And I have not gotten any of it or known about it until this year. And when I tried to talk to a legal representation about how I can go about getting that, I was told I have to be graduated, I have to be 17 and a half, and be completely financially stable by myself without any legal assistance from the government, like SNAP benefits. And so I can't collect the Social Security checks because of the fact that they stop when I'm 18, but because of the fact that I'm not 17 and a half, I haven't graduated, and I'm on EBT, I cannot collect them, which keeps me from having some sort of financial support. And yeah, I agree, it makes no sense. I wish there were more legal resources to be able to work around things like that, because that would make the world of a difference for me. It would mean that I can pay my rent. It would mean that I have a dog. It would mean that I can consistently feed my dog without worrying if I'm gonna have enough to feed him. And it would just make my life so much better to be able to have that money, but I can't. So having some sort of legal representation available would make all the world's a difference for homeless youth who are on survivor's benefits or who just need legal representation in general.
Thank you guys for sharing that. Some very good answers. So the last question we're going to discuss was also from our youth listening session, and it was, what are some of the barriers keeping you from stable housing, like the requirements of housing? You guys kind of discussed that and had some really good answers.
Credit. Something keeping me from stable housing is everywhere is so expensive. Everyone is charging $1,200 a month for a room in their house. I was extremely lucky to find somewhere affordable, but most places aren't like that, especially if you need accommodations. And I definitely think that something that's keeping me from having stable housing is also being able to find a job. That is a consistent thing that comes up and causing a lot of issues, is not being able to find employment. And if I do, it's not consistent employment, or it doesn't pay well enough for me to be able to be self-sufficient. So yeah, definitely funding and how expensive every single thing is.
Safety. I think that's one of the biggest things for me. The more things that I have about myself, like just being young, being queer, having medical things, especially ones that are viewed controversially, being one of the biggest ones for me is I'm an addict in recovery, so living with people where I'm not going to get triggered around. Living with people in general. I think that that's a big barrier, but then also, like, family can be a really big barrier. I think that family tries to get tries to get in the way sometimes, or it does get in the way in a way that I don't know how to handle. What about my siblings? What about my little sister? I need to be there to put her to bed. I am super blessed to live really close to my sister now, so that's really cool. But yeah, safety.
I have some notes from our listening session, and one of the things you guys did talk about was how apartments want a rental background, which, how are you going to get that?
Yeah, you can't rent from anybody unless you have a rental background in an apartment complex. You have to
And
find.
most people want 3 years.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah,
rental
3 years, what?
Yes, 3 years right after I turn 18. That works great.
I wanted to add to your guilt, the family guilt. Me and my sister were lucky enough to have friends around us that would help us and house us and just be there, while our parents were not. And I can definitely say once they saw the good spot we were in, I feel like, I don't want to say they wanted to take that from us, but I remember I was in a stable home at the time, and my dad told me, he was like, I know you're happy where you're at, but if you come and live with me, in this tea house, then me and your mom, we can get help, and we can recover, and I can get better, and we can live together again. And I'm like, that sounds great, but in reality, that's not gonna happen. And I can't put myself back at square one to hope that this time you change. So it's just really hard. Obviously I love my father, but it's hard to tell him no, because I know I'm already in a better spot than he is. I'm working harder at moving towards something that I want, and it just hurts me that I can't help him, but it also would hurt me more if I got brought down with him.
That was all my questions, and I just want to thank you guys so much. You're incredible people, and let's give a big round of applause for them. They're sharing their stories with us.
All right, we are going to do a few questions if you have them. We've given Zoe veto power on if a question is just a little too personal. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you. Right there.
Does Bright Futures have a way to help establish some banking or credit somehow?
So with the SAFE program right now, I'm, as a transition age youth support specialist, after doing the listening session, I started brainstorming, and I really want to start doing a monthly financial and like credit kind of just workshop and offer that to our clients, because I mean, it's kind of the best place to start is let's teach you and then let's set up a bank account, because a lot of them have set up bank accounts, and I have helped them with navigating that because banks can be tricky. And so that's kind of, yeah.
Have you reached out to the community, like support a youth, that kind of?
We haven't had anything like that yet, but we're definitely down to brainstorm. Yeah, yeah.
We partner with a local bank for a credit class and a banking class. So reaching out to our local banks, they all have curriculum, they all want to do that.
That's amazing. I will definitely do that.
Yeah, I would think First US Credit Union would help.
Yes, I've heard they're very good.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Experiencing homelessness and stuff as a youth and so much uncertainty, how often do you see either yourselves or peers remaining in unhealthy relationships because you're going to lose that apartment, you're going to have to give them back the car that they let you borrow, or getting into relationships that you know are going to be unhealthy, but you just want that surety of some stability in your life?
All the time.
Pretty often. I know quite a few people who have gotten themselves into some pretty horrible situations because they have somewhere to live. I was living somewhere for a year that was pretty abusive, but I stayed there because I had nowhere else to go. And that was in Washington. That was a whole other state. I came here because I had nowhere else to go in Washington, and I grew up here, so I knew I would find somewhere to be here. But it happens all too often where people feel too secure with where they're living, but they're in an unstable relationship or an unsafe household, but they're too scared to lose that to be able to leave there.
My family at the time, my sister, my dad, while my stepmom was incarcerated, we lived with my ex-boyfriend. Our families lived together for a couple of months, and it was very amazing for them to do what they did and offer them their house, you know what I mean? But it ended so abruptly. Like, I went home to the cops there telling me to leave with all my stuff, and my stuff getting thrown to the curb, telling me I need to get out. And once he got physical and violent, when I defended myself, he took me to court and filed a restraining order against me. Because the way he came at me, I reacted to that, and so I was the antagonizer in the situation. So I got the restraining order, me and my father both, and it really ruined our relationship. Obviously, I already knew previously from other friendships that went downhill that it wasn't gonna last long, us being there. It was just somewhere for now, which was okay at the time, and I don't want to say put my relationship at jeopardy, but I knew what was going to happen. But I stayed, and I stayed with him because I knew that it would keep me and my family together after not being together for so long. So I just feel like I had to endure that for a while just to keep it cordial in a way. So we had a place. And then once we left, we all went our separate ways. I mean, me and her both went to different friends' house. Our dad moved out of town again, and it was kind of just all back to square one once again. And so firsthand, I know very well what it's like to ruin a very good relationship over a very bad situation.
Thank you for that, Emily. Any other questions?
I guess I'm kind of wondering as to, I hear all these, I'm new to this, so all these organizations, what is the plan for these young people? There seems so many of you, and I'm just wondering, is there a plan?
Well, that kind of becomes more complicated as most things. There's so many factors, and that includes the fact that multiple of these youth are under 18. And so we're working with all these incredible organizations to do our best to move forward, and we all kind of have different plans. Like right now, we have 2 youth finishing school and wanting to move on to get a job so that then they can get a stable housing situation. And we have Anja, who's in school full-time, trying to get her education. And so we don't have like a solid plan, but something that would be incredible and that our Youth Action Board is advocating for is a local youth shelter, because that could really change so many lives, and it could actually help these youth, because that would be a place they could go and have support and a bed at night, because that can be really scary not knowing where you're sleeping. It needs millions of funding, so it won't really go anywhere until we have people willing to put in the millions. So it's about advocacy and taking it to the Capitol and being like, we need this.
I also think it's good to remember that our Youth Action Board started like 3 months ago?
It started in June. Our Youth Action Board started in June. I only started in February, so I'm working as fast as I can. But we're all going to be attending the YES conference this coming year, and we're very excited for that. And we're in our Youth Action Board meetings right now learning on how to advocate, how to tell our stories, and
Creating a logo.
Yes, we are so excited. We got a graphic designer that Anja was friends with, and she's going to create our logo for us. We're meeting with her at our next meeting, so we're going to have shirts by the time we go to the YES conference. We're really excited about that. They're just an incredible group that's been working really hard to get this started.
Would it make sense to, there's a lot of people with gigantic homes here, really gigantic homes, that there's only 2 people living in, usually because they're retired. And it seems like maybe there could be some kind of a program where people that are homeless, adult or youth, could go for 2 or 3 days a week. They could be at that home or another home or something, and I know it wouldn't be total stability for you, I get that, but at least knowing where we've got some nights. And why I bring this up, and I'm not trying to compare you to animals, but at the Grass Valley City Council a few weeks ago, they talked about this foster program for animals. And everybody was so excited, and you could pick up your animal and they could go home with you for the weekend and you'd have for the weekend. Well, what about picking up your kid and going home with them for the weekend, for you guys?
I think that becomes a little complicated because these are individuals that want independent lives, and that can be a little different. Did you have a comment? You had a, yeah, of course.
We have explored the idea of shelter. I mean, this is obviously a big challenge that we have, but the reality is, I mean, it's one thing to buy a house. There's probably 3 of you in this room who could buy us a house, but it's about that ongoing support. It's people living there with them. It's people making sure they're safe. It's people making sure they're having this case management services. It's making sure, and to your point, Lily, host homes, yeah, they could work, but it takes such an important amount of support, not only for the child, but for the host, because there's a lot that these kids have gone through, and there's a lot that they need, and sometimes that can be a mismatch and can cause more trauma and more challenges. And so it's not that we're ignoring those opportunities. I think they could be there, and I think for people, if this is something you'd like to talk about, we're certainly open to that. But the dollars still have to be there. And the grant funding does not, those are not coming for shelter at this point.
It kind of
Yes.
seems as though in hospitality house, they were able to get Newsom here, and all of a sudden, this expansive apartments came, and I'm just wondering, is that an avenue in which you can say, these kids need that same thing?
Well, this is a really good first step, right? When we started SAFE, we didn't have a reputation yet. Like, who are you guys to come in and think you can do this, right? I mean, we had to kind of prove to the community that this exists, B is important to deal with, and this is really the first gathering that we've had of y'all, to really start having deeper conversations about this. So I invite people who would like to keep these conversations going about the different services to be in touch with us. And it's not just gonna fall on Bright Futures. This is a community challenge, it's a community problem. We all have to work together. It doesn't need to be the Bright Futures for Youth shelter, there just needs to be a youth shelter. And I would say too, in the world of housing, there are some exciting things going on. A newly developed community land trust, which is Tracy's here somewhere, or what? Tracy's over here, talking about building affordable, truly affordable housing in perpetuity. And those are the kind of housing units that would be perfect for these young people to have their first opportunity at homeownership. Well, rental, even into homeownership.
Thank you, Jen. Sorry, I'll get to you, sorry.
I'm going to be rude and just say that everybody in this room needs to be an advocate for when the shelter is proposed, because that magic governor day didn't happen by accident. It took 20 years and a whole bunch of people saying that nobody who needed housing belonged in that neighborhood. We need people to say yes in my backyard.
One of the things that I did a million years ago when I started school is I had a checking account, but I went to the bank, and I don't know if the financial industry has changed so much, but they used to have secured credit cards, and I put up, this is a long time ago, $200, which, but then you can use that card over a year, and then at the end, they would say, okay, we're gonna give you a credit card, and it was, maybe 1,000 or something. I don't know if they still do that, but that's something that might be helpful.
We do that with our IOP kids.
Oh, you do?
Our
Oh,
OSU
okay.
youth, but over 18.
Over 18. Yeah, the thing we run into a lot is over 18, even with like the hospitality house, it's over 18.
I went to go apply for a secured credit card the other day, and the minimum is $500. I don't have $500 to just sit there at this moment.
All right, so we're excited to have our panelists today. Thank you guys so much for making the time. So first up, we have Rachel Pena. In Nevada. You're like a rock star. Nevada County Social Services. And so, Rachel, can you just introduce yourself and how you touch this world and what you're seeing and, tell us the stuff.
Tell you the things. Hi, my name is Rachel Pena. I'm the Director of Social Services for Nevada County. That means that I oversee all of our eligibility and employment programs, also our child welfare division and adoptions, also adult services and veteran services. And so, thank you. So we, I think we interact with this population of youth in a number of different ways. So some of the ways that we are working to address homelessness, both for youth and for all of our community members, are through through our child welfare programs. We have a funding source called Bringing Families Home. We have our HSP program, which is right now working with a number of families, specifically families with children. That HSP, sorry, there's so many acronyms, is Housing Support Programs. Our CalWorks program is working with about 165 youth who are pregnant or parenting between the ages of 16 and 24. We are also working with child welfare youth, so any youth that ages out of foster care. We've got extended foster care programming, and we partner with Nevada County Superintendent of Schools on the transition housing program. And there are a number of ways too, but I'm conscious of a lot of youth, or a lot of other people here, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, and next up is Jeff Gold from Nevada County Probation.
All right, Jeff Goldman from.
Oh, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. Jeff Goldman, Chief Probation Officer, and so similar to some of the stuff that Rachel does, but kind of more geared towards the youth that come into the criminal legal system. And so our main goal is to keep kids out of that system because we don't want that to be the avenue that they have to get those resources. And historically, I mean, we've changed a lot of things. Historically, it used to be the juvenile hall was a housing option, and we're trying to make sure that that's not the option that those that kids have when they need resources. They don't need to come into our system. So one of the things we've done is, even though in some larger counties, it's probably not the best way to do it because there would be some net widening and bringing kids into the system, but we've kind of moved further upstream and provided services to kids before they come into our system from referrals from schools and places like that. We did pull some data, and out of the first 200 referrals we got, only one kid ended up in the system. So we feel like we're doing a good job of not pulling them back into the system by front-loading some of that stuff. So for those that don't know, on the juvenile system, as far as the criminal legal system goes, and I was born before Cal Youth started, so I might use an antiquated reference, but we handle it from soup to nuts. So it's from the initial referral or arrest from the law enforcement agency until they get out of the system, even up to deciding, in the majority of cases, whether they go to the DA's office or go through the court process and all those sorts of things. So we really have a lot of the decision points in kids' lives as to where they go in that long-term kind of decision-making. And we also handle the adult side as well. So as some of the youth panel said, like when adults are in the system, obviously their kids come along with them. And so trying to provide resources for them as well as, if appropriate, deciding between Rachel's shop and mine whether the kid would be better served in the child welfare system or in the criminal legal system, as well as, unfortunately, as some of the kids said, like some of those long-term kind of benefits only happen if you're involved in the foster care system, like non-minor dependent, or AB 12 as it's referred to where you can get funding for housing and living and those sorts of things. And some kids have figured that out because, as we saw, the kids are very smart, that, hey, if I get into this system, then I can get AB 12 and then I have money to live. And that's unfortunate that they have to go through that process just to get that funding. So.
All right, Melissa Balderston, Nevada County Superintendent of Schools. Thank you.
Melissa Balderston, Superintendent of Schools Office. I oversee programs for our foster youth, juvenile justice, and Indian Ed students at the County Office of Ed. We work with foster youth pre-K all the way up to the age of 25. For the purpose of this meeting, in our independent living program, we hold their hand from 16, younger in some cases, up to the age of 21 into adulthood. We provide life skills classes, heavy case management, housing support. The sky's the limit. Domestic bliss, how to be a good renter. We partner with banks for credit. We've been doing it for about 30 years, so we're pretty seasoned on helping kids transition safely and successfully into adulthood. New this year, we have partnered with probation to provide ILP services to all probation youth in Nevada County, regardless of age. So what does that mean? That means heavy case management, also academic supports within the schools so that they can get a high school diploma. As well as we can pay for driver's training. We can pay for positive extracurricular activities because we know to avoid recidivism, they need to put their energy and build their self-esteem here rather than over here doing things that have gotten them involved in the probation department. So we have our JJILP program. We also have our THP Plus housing program. So once foster youth exit care at 18, they're eligible to go into what's called AB 12, it's extended foster care. It's a voluntary program from 18 to 21, where it helps pay for housing and rent and living expenses, and has case management both through ILP and some other programs under that. And then at 21, after they have gone through that, they can go into my program, which is it's the last little bit off the system. We provide rent, heavy housing support. I am in their business because, as I will talk about some barriers, they have to be good renters so they can continue to be rented too. So we're in their home. If we have a dirty toilet, we're going to buy you a brush and we're going to stand next to you. We're going to teach you how to steam clean your carpet. But and then connecting to resources, helping them get employment. And college. We work very closely with the college. So really self-sufficiency, all of it that wraps that student. And then, of course, I'm Native, so I oversee Indian Ed, and we're kind of the information hub, and we connect our students through Indian Ed to Native resources within the community that can help them transition as well.
All right, Alyssa Navo, Communities Beyond Violence, also a board member of the COC, Continuum of Care.
Hi, everybody. As Jennifer said, my name is Alyssa Navo. I'm the housing manager for Community Beyond Violence. So I oversee both our housing case management and our emergency shelter program. And also, as Jennifer said, I hold a seat on the board of our Continuum of Care, that board that essentially is made up of service providers and county officials to work towards ending homelessness in Nevada County. Some of the ways that we at Community Beyond Violence are serving youth is over the last 2 years, we have recognized that a lot of these issues we're talking about, like homelessness, domestic violence, housing instability, poverty, are all generational. And if we want to make an impact, we really need to be focusing more on providing more holistic interventions for our young folks who are experiencing domestic violence, including familial violence. Caitlin and I have worked extensively to try to really broaden the horizons of what our homeless response system for youth looks like. So we developed a transitional age youth core team for case conferencing and all things youth and young people housing related, I suppose. In regards to Community Beyond Violence, all of the services that we have for our adult population are available to youth. A lot of folks don't know that in the state of California, anybody from the age 12 and up can actually get their own restraining order. And so we want to be able to provide those supports. And as we've seen our program grow with the intention of being able to better support youth, we are seeing more and more youth come in and realize that, hey, maybe this relationship I'm in isn't healthy, or hey, maybe what I've seen growing up wasn't healthy, and I'm still reeling with the trauma of witnessing domestic violence or familial violence throughout the home. And I'm really excited to be here today, so thank you all for joining us.
And last, we have Caitlin Bisdee. She is the SAFE program manager, and I want to acknowledge Caitlin. So she really kind of took the reins about 3 years ago and has built her team and supports her team and supports her kiddos, and I'm just grateful for her. So, Caitlin.
Thank you. Yes, hi, I'm Caitlin Bisdee. I'm the SAFE program manager here. I've been here for about 4 years. I started as a case manager. Started my career in child welfare, actually, back in Pennsylvania, and then moved here and found this wonderful organization doing this amazing work. The SAFE program, if you don't know, is a housing navigation stabilization program. Jen mentioned in the beginning that it started back in 2019 as a small pilot program. We were supposed to serve, I think it was 12 youth a year. Since then we've served 500. So we currently have, I think, about 95 clients that we're serving right now. 60% of those are actively homeless, whether that means they're couch surfing, staying at someone else's house, doubled up, staying in a tent, living in a car, in a shelter, and the rest are housed but unstably, or maybe they were just housed and they're just needing that additional ongoing support. So we don't put kids or put youth into homes and just say, okay, good luck. We continue that work with them, making sure that they can pay their rent, that they can pay their bills, that if there is anything going on with their landlord, that we can step in and provide that additional support. I'm just excited to be here, and you guys were amazing. I'm so proud of you, and just glad to be here and learn from everyone else.
All right. So, and we're not going to, not every single person has to answer, right, kind of a thing, but I just like to pose to the panel. So is there a common thread on why youth become homeless, or patterns that you've seen, or anything that you can speak to? Thoughts?
I'm just going to jump in and say, yeah, I mean, coming from the social services side, and then I think also what was mentioned earlier is that this is a generational issue, right? And then there's incredible wealth disparity in our communities. Like, this is what's going on for folks, that it's really hard to afford housing on minimum wage jobs. It's really hard to afford housing if you haven't had the like advantages of stable income, stable housing, healthy relationships throughout your life, right? So I think the wealth disparity is the, like, honest to God, number one issue here, but that's too big for us to solve in this room. But I would also say that, I mean, some of the generational violence, some of the generational trauma, all of that. So again, I know that's too big and maybe probably too heavy, but it has to be said.
Yeah, from where I sit, I mean, in the houses that we're in, there's just a lot of chaos in the home. And it's interesting. I've worked since 2001 in probation, and I worked at a previous county, and this county in particular, it seems like it's just different as far as what's happening in the homes. And so a lot of times, and whether that's, the parent, eventually trying to have some accountability, and then the kid doesn't want to be in the home, or that's because they've never tried to enforce those things for a long time, or it's just that there's so much chaos, the kids it's not a healthy environment for them. And so the majority of the kids that we have, I mean, I asked this morning as well, are the couch surfing kind of kids, of where they'll go for a little bit. And a lot of our kids, they've just, whether it's appropriate or not, they've kind of burned their bridges with other family members and other friends and those sorts of things. So they're hopping from couch to couch for 2 weeks at a time, but not necessarily having any sort of stable environment for them to be in. So,
ditto on what they said, but I also want to talk about the youth that are over 18 that are homeless. So going back to, this youth panel was amazing. They really nailed it on the head. Credit's a big deal. You don't get credit until you're 18. If you have credit before 18, it's because someone has stolen your credit. So sometimes there's those barriers. And for youth that have been in care at any time in their life, they can get what's called a foster youth to independence housing choice voucher. So we can apply for that. We can get that for them, which will pay their rent for a few years. Problem is, there's nobody that'll accept that low of rent up here. Very few people. Or some of our youth have gone into maybe other housing programs or have gone on their own and rented, but they don't have any skills to rent. No one has taught them, hey, you can't leave this rental unit dirty with holes in the wall or you're not going to get rented to again. So that we provide pretty intensive case management for our kids. We are in their stuff because you have to be. We have to teach them what not to do, how to be a good renter. And so what we're seeing for the youth that before we get them and then have to go through a whole nother homelessness issue is that they've kind of burned their bridges, particularly we have a property management company that does quite a bit up here, and not just here, sister counties. And so once the impression is this young person who was just learning how to be an adult may have blown it under them, they're put on a no rent list, and then that cuts out more than 50% of the housing that we can find for them. Clear to other counties. I just had to go down to Yuba County to find housing for a very amazing young man who, again, turned 18. He's a boy. He didn't know how to clean his house or how to leave it clean. And then to find out down there, they also oversee down there. So it took us a while to get him housed. So it is a challenge. And then also substance use. We need a much more robust system of support for our youth here in Nevada County that are battling substance use.
excuse me, sorry. Piggybacking off of what everybody else said, yes, absolutely. Cost of living, lack of life skills, all of those things. But I think when we're talking about the root cause of homelessness, when I think about it, a lot of it just boils down to trauma, regardless of what that looks like, right? So I have been working at Community Beyond Violence for going on 7 years now, and the amount of kiddos that we have seen, or even adults, right, who are able to have the life skills and have the want and the drive to do things without the mental health support and addressing like those barriers. I've seen so many folks unintentionally set themselves up for failure because they don't feel like they've been deserving of good, or that they can move forward, or that they are equipped to handle the reality of what being adult looks like. You know, I've had folks ask me like, oh wait, I'm supposed to pay rent every month. And when you hear those kinds of things, it's like, we have not been setting anybody up for success. And while we recognize a lot of it is generational, we can't just push back onto the like outcomes of a family, right? As a community, we can all be stepping in and supporting and teaching and, you know, showing folks that you do deserve better and that we do care and that we can teach these skills over time, because we're not expecting anybody, especially who is actively in crisis or have just known crisis their entire life, to have it all together or be perfect, right? So I think that when we're talking about the root causes of homelessness, it is most of it, for me, at least in my experience, boils down to trauma and the experiences that these folks are carrying through their entire life. You know, it's a harsh reality to say, but I've worked with families where their child is, you know, by the time they turn 3 years old, they're already experiencing chronic homelessness. And when we're setting people up like that from being 3 years old, how are we really going to see a successful future without that immediate intervention and those supports?
Yes, all of that. I agree with everyone here, especially on the trauma piece. I think with a lot of our clients, most of our youth that we serve have some kind of trauma in their life, right, that they have experienced. And right now we're seeing a really big uptick in pregnant and parenting youth. We have currently 30 youth who are either pregnant or parenting, and I would say a very good percentage of those have experienced homelessness as a child themselves, and now their children are going through that as well. So that's really something that we're trying to focus on. We've got a young moms group that meets weekly, and we're bringing in, you know, public health to do all kinds of different education with them, and we also provide just a meal and childcare during that, so that they can have some time to kind of build community with other moms that are going through a similar thing as them. Going back to the root cause, though, so yes, lack of affordable housing, economic instability. It's, as we heard earlier, it's really hard for young people to find a job anywhere, but really here I've seen a lot of issues with that. If you don't have a job experience, it's unlikely you're going to get hired when there's someone else that's applying that does have that experience. And just the systemic failures, right? Like, we just haven't set up our systems to really support young people. So whether that's they slip through the cracks of child welfare when they're minors because they're, you know, maybe a teenager, like Kim was saying earlier. We do have quite a few minors that were never in child welfare, and they could use that support. No one wants to go into those systems, right? But sometimes it's needed, especially when they're, you know, sleeping outside or sleeping in a place that's just, it's not safe for them. Yeah.
So when we were talking earlier, obviously a lot of gaps were identified by the kiddos, shelter, more services. What do we need to do as a community to help fill these gaps? How can all of these folks start a dialogue and with us or participate? How can we fix some of these issues?
I think our systems, you know, we're very collaborative up here, but there are certain ways that our systems are not talking. You know, I want to, Charlotte, are you in the room? Raise your hand. She's back there. That's our McKinney-Vento person, one of our McKinney-Vento people over at Nevada County Superintendent Schools office. I do want to point out that if you have a minor who is homeless, to make sure that they're connecting at the school site as being homeless. There's a form that's filled out. It's confidential. But if they're identified at school as homeless, then when they go to college, they're considered independent and they don't need their parents' information for the FAFSA and financial aid, which could help them be stable and pay for housing and rent. So it's super important that we are getting all those youth connected at the school site as well. Yeah, it's very underfunded. I'm going to say that. I know, very, very underfunded, and not every county gets it, from what I understand. So really underfunded program, and if we want to prevent bigger issues as adults, we need to provide those services early on. And so how do we work together to avoid homelessness for these kids at a younger age so that we don't have a bigger adult issue? I've been here so long that I remember the days before we had AB 12. And I want to point out AB 12, which is extended foster care, is for a small number of kids that exit out at 18. I work with a lot more foster youth that don't qualify for that, who went into guardianships earlier on and qualify for my program or have been adopted, and they don't get that after 18. And so it's such a small number, and even then, if we can't find housing for them, we have a problem here. They've got rental support. So setting aside housing, we did, Crease Group Homes closed down, and they opened up their housing units for rentals for our young adults. It was amazing while we had it. And then they closed down. It was bought by the county, and then we have very limited options as to where we can put these kids from people that understand trauma, because these kids are going to come with trauma, and they're going to have to learn how to be good renters while healing from so much. And we need people that understand that, and heavy case management on this side of the fence to also mitigate issues.
I'm going to throw a little in here. I want to talk about how we can do better with gaps, but I also want to talk about any shining lights. So around collaboration, like what has happened? How have we changed? 5 years ago, we weren't as collaborative. So what are any shining lights that we'd like to let everybody know about?
Which do you want to be addressed first? The
up to
good
you.
or the tough?
It's up to you.
I think some of the things that we can recognize that we've done better as a community is collaboration. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm on the board for the COC, and a part of that role was being a facilitator for a subcommittee called the Youth and Families Committee. We do talk about families, but really it is a space where many of the youth service providers or youth touching folks come together, and we collaborate around the issues that are happening, seeing the gaps, identifying, and then bringing that back to the COC and county officials to really try to work through and address those gaps. With the creation of that, we were able to also identify needs at the service level, right? So we had this thing called the Housing Resource Team where we were case conferencing, and we saw this thing where it was like, youth is being pushed to the bottom of these lists and not getting case conferenced, or like not getting the time during case conferencing because they weren't quite families, they weren't quite chronically homeless individuals who we're seeing with different level of extreme barriers, right? They haven't had, so it was just not, even though we had a space to collaborate, it just wasn't effective. And so Caitlin and I had come together and we created our own case conferencing group specifically for transitional age youth, where we have people at the table who are talking about the specific barriers and these, identifying these kiddos and the needs that they have and really trying to wrap them in more holistic care. Outside of that, we also were asked to join a cohort. I don't know how many folks have heard of the initiative that the county has been doing the last couple of years to get veteran homelessness to a functional zero. We're actively working on that now for youth, and that has been huge, where we are developing outreach methods, we are developing more supportive services, and identifying folks who really need to have a seat at the table, who historically are like, I don't deal with housing, why should I be there? Well, even though you don't deal with housing, you might know people who do, or you might be able to influence employers or landlords or legislators or the folks who should care, right? I think those have been some of the shining lights that we've seen. You want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, you know, when I first started, yeah, the going to the meetings, right, the HRT, the HEART meetings, these case conferencing meetings that were like for the whole county, I kind of like stopped going, right, because whenever we would get to a young person, if that was even the case, it would kind of just get brushed over because there was other things going on, or they didn't have the higher number, right, on the vulnerability index score. So I think starting that case conferencing for youth specifically, and I will say it was also with NCSOS, we had another member who was the core member of doing that, really has built that collaboration. And it's something that has been really exciting to see. What was the actual question?
Just shining light, which you're doing.
Yes. And just how we can work together more as a community, right? So I think with that, I think one of the most important things that we have to do is center youth voice. So youth and young adults are the experts in their own experience, and it's really important that we include them, not just include them, but have them be a part of the decision-making, of the planning, and if we do that, then our outcomes will be better because they're the ones that know what they need.
Aside from, you know, the collaboration amongst us, you know, Bright Futures might have a youth enter through them and, oh, this is a foster youth or a juvenile justice involved, and then we'll work together because there's some relationships built there that shouldn't be severed. So that's been nice. And the case conferencing has been amazing. But youth voice, not about us, without us. These are the experts. They have lived it. We can say we know it. Oh, we think this is a problem or that's wrong. We don't know. We haven't lived it. We have a pretty robust youth ambassador program here in Nevada County for foster youth. So they sit on our ILT leadership, interagency leadership team, which is a stretch for them, but we want them on those high-level meetings. They sit on our EACs, which are the school side of it. They do trainings for our child welfare, which is amazing. I gotta say, child welfare has really embraced our youth in terms of train us. How do we detain kids in a less traumatic way? How can we be good social workers when we have to detain children? And how do we train our foster parents how to be good foster parents? But what I think was a win out of today, we used to have foster youth, or we take them to the foster youth summit every year. We buy them professional clothing, and then we take 6 youth down there, and they really work on youth leadership skills. In the past, they used to take them over there to the Capitol every time to talk to legislators, and then they were rebuilding the Capitol, and that stopped for a few years. And I thought to myself, while this gentleman was speaking over here, that why are we not getting the Youth Action Board together with my ambassador program and the youth commissioners to come up with what are the challenges here in Nevada County, and let's have a day. Let's go to the Capitol. Let's meet with our local reps. Let's get the kids in front and empower them and their leadership skills to shine a light on the issues going on with youth in rural counties. And so I'm going to make it, I know they're all on board. We're going to make it happen.
And just quickly, you mentioned, you asked about shining lights and also gaps, and I see some overlap. I'll just want to highlight. You know, I think everybody's mentioned collaboration. I think a shining light is this happening. Right. This many people here to support our youth that are struggling with homelessness or that are experiencing homelessness right now is an incredible shining light. There's so many resources in this room and agencies represented in this room. So that feels like a shining light. A lot of other collaborations like our special multi-agency response team, our family urgent response system, there are a number of like first 5 family visiting programs, supported family visiting programs. There are just so many prevention programs. But I really do see that as a gap as well. Like we need to be starting sooner. We shouldn't be, the work that Bright Futures is doing through the SAFE program is incredible, and we should have started way before we found youth and families in these situations. Like this should be, and the gap that I really see is those programs are being cut. Our safety net, our social safety net programs are being cut. Our housing dollars are being cut.
are, there are very real threats to prevention programs. Our First Five funding is being cut. Like, there's so many things that we should be doing earlier and earlier with families to help maintain stable housing from before people are having children, and then once they have children, and then, we should be working on parenting, we should be working on stable housing and affordable housing, we should be working on social safety net programs. Those are all things that are in danger right now that I really see could be preventing this issue.
All right, I think because, what time is it? Yeah. Jeff, please.
All right. So, starting with the gaps, just real quickly. So, like I said, kind of the difference in the chaos in the homes. We frequently have kids that we don't want in the juvenile hall to get booked in there, and we want to release them, but the parents refuse to pick them up. And so we have we have a pretty good case management model using the functional family therapy model that if we have a couple days, we usually can mitigate some things. But we need some respite care, some place to bring them for a couple of days that's not the juvenile hall, that there could be a cooling off period between the parent and the kid. And that doesn't exist. So we end up calling child welfare. They might end up spending the night in the child welfare office. That's happened before, because there's nowhere to take those kids. And as far as the other gap, like you had said about the kids, we have several like juvenile justice commissions and things like that, and not to knock the kids that are, with a 4.5 GPA and doing all the things they want to do, but that is the tendency of the kids that end up on those sorts of panels, and we're working on trying to expand participation in those things. But I would say that one of the shining lights is one thing that we've always noticed is that if there's a positive adult in a kid's life, that's more beneficial than most things that the probation officer has time to do and other folks. So we've worked with CASA, which is court-appointed special advocates, and so they had more CASAs than they had kids that were being appointed through the court. So now there's a mentoring program for CASAs that are interested. It's not always an easy sell to have, CASAs or resource families for our population as it is for Rachel's, for babies and other things that people want to take in. And so those CASAs work with those kids, and I think the main part is it just shows them a different world that exists outside the world that they've lived in their whole lives, because they just, sometimes when you take them places, they're just like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this existed. I didn't know, I had a kid the other day say, I didn't know families ate dinner together. Those sorts of things that it at least exposes them to those things that they exist. And when they develop these relationships, some of these CASAs will sign, be a co-signer on their rental or those sorts of things, help them, get those checking accounts that a parent would normally do, but they can fill that role and help them bridge those gaps and, sign those things so they don't have to have 3 years rental reference and that sort of thing. So.
I do want to point out we have Helping Hands Nurturing Center, which does an amazing job with our both fathers and mothers. We have paid under our program for our several fathers and mothers to participate in that program. But sometimes cost is an issue. Getting it paid for has been a challenge as well for that.
Legal services in Nevada County has always been kind of a rocky, or pro bono or free or sliding scale legal services in Nevada County has always been a little rocky. We've had some success with some programs in the past, and we are seeing more success with like Northern Services Legal, or Northern California Legal Services. And then I know at Community Beyond Violence, we do have an attorney who is able to support with some of the, with legal services in relation to domestic violence and sexual assault, right? So we have people who are supporting with custody, or we have somebody who's supporting with custody, or really drawn out and convoluted cases. It's just the amount of need that our community has, and really that catch-all programming doesn't necessarily exist, right? There's really specific funding opportunities for youth and young adults, and various other subpopulations, and the fact that we just don't have, as of right now, somewhere where everyone can access legal services for, I guess, more general things is a difficulty.
I know some take conferencing committees in other communities that are a bit more robust, or even with their youth action boards, have lawyers on that committee. And they just sit there right where with them. They kind of step out for the confidential pieces where they're talking about kids and names and things, but then they can be a part of that committee and really understanding and getting involved where they can and pulling in colleagues if need be.
And I know, sorry, just to add, and I know that we've actually had our attorney support folks with really just providing information around the emancipation process. But even then, when it is so long and drawn out, and there's only a limited scope of service that they can provide, it still feels like there's more bureaucracy and more red tape that is outside of the control, right, of the service providers.
Foster homes are under what's called community care licensing, and they exist for a reason, to make sure that those foster parents are treating our foster youth well and spending that money on our foster youth. So when you have programs such as that, it has to have significant oversight, and I believe they still have to go through community care licensing, and so it can be very tricky if it's not through the foster care system. I don't know if anybody...
Kind of along those lines, along the red tape lines, people have, obviously it's like shelters, yeah, why don't we just do it? Let's just do it. Well, I would love to just do it if it was just do it, but it's not just do it, right? There's licensing, especially minors. I mean, that is a whole world. You have to be licensed. It's very specific. And again, it's safety. We get that. But it does make it challenging for, nice community members to come along and even open the church for the cold night. That's not something we can do.
And I really have to make this statement because I've seen this through the years. I'm really careful on who I let work with our foster youth because I call them the white horses. They want to commit on their white horse and they want to save these kids, and then the moment they caught them having sex or smoking weed, you're going to go to hell or you're a bad person, and then that just destroys something else inside of a child. And so making sure that there is oversight of folks coming and working with these kids are important. Also, changing the goggles within our community towards this population, because understanding trauma and looking at these kids that are rough around the edges and maybe doing things to survive, instead of saying, what is wrong with you? What happened to you? And so we do provide quite a bit of trauma-informed practice trainings through the County Office of Ed. We've trained Bright Futures, we've trained our schools, and so that is a resource if you don't have folks that have had that training, and you shouldn't be a mentor if you haven't been trauma-informed practice trained.
To add to that, training's available. Community Beyond Violence also holds crisis intervention training twice a year and talks a lot about trauma-informed care and how we can really support folks who have experienced domestic violence, sexual violence, or are experiencing any crisis within our community. So if anybody wants to get involved, feel free to reach out to any of us, I believe.
We have a lot of guardianships that are done through probate court, and they don't qualify for all these resources. And so we do need more. What we do have right now is I call it the TIPS support group, Trauma-Informed Parenting Support Group for all foster, adoptive, and guardianship families. If we can get them to, with their peers, to hear from them and also mitigate some of those issues before they get to 18, that's why it's so important that any kid that's eligible for ILP is connected to us, because we get in there. Oftentimes, sometimes a grandma will take them in as guardianship, and grandma's living on SSI. So the moment that child turns 18 and they don't get a check, they can't survive. And so then that child's out on their own. If we can mitigate that earlier, before that 18th birthday, then we can try to set up housing supports, at least get them a housing choice voucher, case manage, or get some rent in there for grandma. Right? And so there needs to be more, but there is some. There is a support group. Please send them my way.
And I would also say for those who are in that unaccompanied minor category, because that's kind of the missing kiddos that don't have those supports. So in that situation, if they were not eligible for Melissa's program at NCSOS, it's a safe program call. Yeah. All right. Sorry, one more?
Oh, no? I was just going to answer.
Oh, sorry, Alyssa.
Just from speaking from personal experience, I think that at the community level, for all kids, but just for context, I was in guardianship until I was 18. I remember 2 visits from somebody involved with child welfare, and those ended by the time I was 8, and I never spoke to anybody again. We stopped going to court by the time I was 15. And after our last court date, I actually was asked to move out and moved in with a partner. And that became very unstable after the time I turned 18. And so what I want to have everybody leave this room with is really, first of all, dispelling the fears or the stigma around what homelessness looks like in our community. We have so many people who are looking at Brunswick area or other things, and there's so much rhetoric around cleaning up our county. And maybe if we provided the intervention to those folks that we see as adults who might be causing or who might seem like they are a nuisance, which I do not believe. Of course, I'm in this work for a reason. If we could have prevented that earlier, then we wouldn't be in the housing crisis that we're in, right? I got so lucky that I identified myself in being in a bad situation. And put applications out there, and that Community Beyond Violence was willing to employ me as a 20-year-old with no experience, making a living wage at that point, and helping me with the support that I needed as an employee to get back on my feet and and learn about what housing stability was, and really provide mentorship because I cared about the work. And I think that if there's any other business owners or folks who are working with kiddos or in hiring in positions where they can hire, give them chances, right? We have bad employees no matter what, how old they are, how much experience they have. I have looked at people through interviews and been like, wow, this is the best fit ever. And then 3 days in, I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I even do to myself here, right? And so without being able to provide those opportunities and giving those, taking the risks on somebody, we're not giving people a chance, right? I don't know that if I hadn't been able to step into the social services realm that I'd be where I am today instead of following the footsteps of the people that were in my family and the things that I had learned and known. So that is kind of my takeaway around how we can better support folks in that way.
All right, well, we're going to wrap up. In the interest of time, I want to thank the panelists. Thank you so much. I know you guys were cut a little short, but I know hearing from our kiddos was all of the highlight of our day. So thank you all for coming. This has been an amazing day. I hope you've learned a lot. I'm sure you're not satisfied with all the things that are happening, but I hope you understand more about the challenge that this community faces, and I hope that you will find a way to get involved in the solution.